My name is Thomas McGregor. I'm going to cover today the practical skills section and my problem solving section, and maybe a bit of planning. I thought I'd bulk them all into rather than three separate videos. I'll start off with the practical skills. The one that I probably developed the most was my recording techniques. Um, I before I started doing this with Logic Pro, I knew how to record audio in and a little bit of MIDI. Um, didn't know anything about microphone technique. Didn't know about compressors, reverbs, all sorts like that. I feel like I've developed massively in that area. I did, especially on the songs Hallelujah and Mardi Bum. With Hallelujah, it was mostly reverbs, as I really discovered how to use those by using layered reverbs. I learn how to use what's called a bus on Logic, which means you can send only part of your signal to a reverb or a compressor or something, so you can have the dry signal and then the affected signal. As a guitar player, I had to use a lot of my guitar playing skills, especially for when I was putting string arrangements in, because I'm a guitar player. If I needed on Weird Fishes, if I needed to note this note it's an E note, and I understood that, and I knew that, and that really helped. As for the songs, I didn't really struggle with learning any of them or anything like that. It was more just to find my bearings. I learned how to fingerpick a lot better due to learning Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley. I normally cannot fingerpick to save my own life, but now I've took that into other projects that I do outside of college. Anything with involves using the fingers, I've always been a pick player. As a singer as well, I wouldn't really have called myself a singer before this project. I had sung in bands and stuff before, and I didn't really have any confidence, and I had to sing with all these different styles using my falsetto voice, singing softer, singing harder, double tracking vocals as well was a big thing. And it's kind of given me the confidence to go off and gig a lot more. I've started doing more solo gigs for myself, which I think the skills that I've learned in this has really helped with my confidence for that. As I learned how to control my voice a lot better. I had one more. And my skills as a researcher absolutely improved tenfold. I use different sources for that. I used YouTube and articles. I created a survey, which I previously wouldn't have been able to know how to do. Further planning on my project, I created a timeline. I didn't strictly follow that timeline, which I'll get into in my problem solving section. I didn't strictly follow that timeline, so I then created a new one of what it ended up being. There was a few variations. I created a new one where it ended up being what the final piece ended up being. Problem solving, there was some problems that I spoke about in my proposal that I ended up encountering, and then there was some that I didn't anticipate coming. The biggest one for me is I'm a procrastinator. I'm terrible with time management. I ended up pushing everything back, and weeks later, not getting work done, just really frustrating myself, and yeah, I just stressed about it, and then because I was stressed, I just didn't do any of it. But hopefully this can help towards that. Another problem I encountered, which was partly my own fault, is I'd left a pen drive with all my files in a computer fairly early on, and someone had just pulled it out and my files had just gone. I wasn't very pleased about that, but that happened, and I had to re-record a couple of songs because of that. Another problem I encountered, which was I really struggled whenever I sat down to do any research work or planning or anything, is I really struggled to write it. For whatever reason, I really struggle with that. I'm not really that good at writing out what I think and stuff. So I then came up with the idea of doing short videos like this instead, where I could explain myself, use how I speak instead, and make it a more friendly atmosphere for myself and be less stressed. I like to talk, I can talk a lot. and that was probably the biggest problem. I ended up pushing that back. I ended up pushing back doing written work for ages, and ended up just doing practical work instead. Another problem that I encountered, which is more like specific to the actual music, was I really struggled with like string sounds, some of them just not sounding like strings, which I used an Nord Stage 2 keyboard instead, which I think really, especially for like solo violins, it really developed that sound a lot better, and it made it sound better to my ears at least. But a couple of issues with that is like I couldn't run MIDI through it. I had to run it through a jack to jack, which created a little bit of buzz, which on some tracks I couldn't use that Nord. Some of the quieter tracks, otherwise it would have just been loads of buzzing and humming, and nobody really needs to hear that really. So yeah, thank you, I'll see you in the next one.